I'm an 18-year-old female. My mother and stepdad have been hounding me about giving them my tax forms so they can have someone do my taxes for me. I already did my taxes on my own with my real father, and when my other parents found out, they freaked on me. Since I didn't make that much, I was only estimated to receive less than $100 back, and my parents, mom and step, were explaining to me how only professionals can do taxes and that I could have gotten way more money if I had done it with them. They had explained to me that food, gas, clothing costs would be included to my taxes and so forth, and that I could have easily gotten over thousands of dollars back. For reference, I made less than $10K. I'm more so conflicted because my father tells me not to trust them, and my mother's stepdad tells me that my dad doesn't know the first thing about taxes. I could just not file at all since I didn't make enough, but I am doing so to help receive money for my schooling. I'm really conflicted on which route I should go regarding my parents, and if receiving a much money is even possible.
So there's a lot of red flags here, and it could be that something is getting misconstrued in the game of telephone, so to speak. I am going to assume that you are communicating everything that they told you accurately. Mostly what's throwing up red flags is that it sounds like your mother and stepfather either don't understand how tax laws work, or they aren't telling you the truth about why they don't want you doing your own taxes. You do not need a tax professional to submit your taxes at your age and income, as you probably only have a W-2 to work off of, assuming you don't have anything like a Roth IRA in your name with dividends or significant interest coming through. There's something else going on, and you certainly cannot be deducting everyday costs like clothing and food from your taxes. For most people in your position, when you file on your own, you would take what's called the standard deduction, rather than listing out tax-deductible expenses from the previous year. If you ever do choose not to take the standard deduction, best practice is to save your receipts for all the tax deductions you claim in case an IRS auditor comes knocking. Best of luck.
As the child of a CPA, certified public account, who had his own practice in California, USA, I learned some basic when it comes to taxes growing up. I can tell you one thing for sure. Your mom and stepdad are dead wrong and most likely committing tax fraud. Food does nothing for your taxes unless you are a chef, baker, caterer, or own a restaurant. And buying food to be used in your professional activities, you can claim food as a business expense or have it count as a deduction in any way. Clothing, again, does nothing for your taxes unless it's a work uniform, should be provided by the employer. You're an actor, and these are for a costume. Theater companies should be buying them. You own a clothing store. You're a fashion designer. Work uniforms should be provided by your employer, but that depends on where you live. If the clothing is purchased as a business expense, then they could potentially be written off as a deduction, but otherwise no. Gas. If you drive as your job, then gas can be considered a deduction, but there is a lot of record keeping you need to do. Your daily commute to and from work does not count. Trying to include gas costs as a deduction on taxes requires you to keep detailed logs of the distance traveled. When, from where to where, starting odometer reading and ending odometer reading, receipts for gas purchases, etc., etc., etc. Trying to include fuel costs is a general pain in the ass. Anything you try to include as a deduction requires a receipt, period. Federal taxes have a general deduction credit that's normally applied to anyone filing their taxes unless they specify that they are going to itemize their deductions. For the majority of people, and it sounds like you land firmly and safely in this category, are best sticking with the general deduction credit. It's usually going to be worth more than any and all itemized deductions you could provide. If you work an honest job, don't have investments, don't win big gambling generally, all you have to do is take the information for your W-2 or 1099 that you get from your job, punch those numbers into the forms that tell you what to enter from the W-2 or 1099 in which boxes, and hit done. It's not as complicated as a lot of people think. Don't get me wrong, it can get very complicated. Currently, I'm guessing you don't own a business, you don't have investments, 401ks, IRAs, etc., and so it should be super simple. If you have any questions, or when things do start to get more complicated, I 100% recommend you retain the services of a CPA, certified public account. Some are better than others. Some specialize in specific areas, but they should all be able to answer questions. CPAs are professionally licensed and accountable. So if they straight fuck up your taxes, they can lose their license, be held accountable. No pun intended, but lol. Generally, they will work to prevent mistakes being made on your taxes. It honestly sounds like your mother and stepfather are either grossly misinformed about taxes, or they are involved in some form of tax fraud and afraid that your honest filing might expose them. All in all, it sounds like you did it right.